Well, here we are. Welcome back to Locking Horns. First time in 2024 we've gotten back together to bring you some extensive insight on what we think of old lore and how it might work in today's society. But now we dive into the Havamal specifically as a modern take and maybe a breakdown of how the Havamal might work for us in the modern day and age. So Jeff, you're a little bit more of a historian than I am. So give us a breakdown of how we get the Havamal. All as I know is mostly it comes from the Codex Regius, which was somewhere in the late 1200s.
Yeah. We have two very important books that we can glean most of the information that we have about our gods and goddesses. One is the Poetic Edda, considered the elder one, which is the Codex Regius. And then we have the Prose Edda, which is the compilation of Snorri Sturluson. Both of them were written down by Christian monks, educated men, compiled, in the case of Snorri Sturluson, an individual who was a scholar, a Christian, but also a scholar, a chieftain, a lawmaker, a law speaker in the Icelandic government. Mm-hmm. So reliable sources to a degree, but all tainted with some aspect or interpretation or verb change or noun change that changes some of the information we have from the old written word taken from the old oral tradition. And
right.
Then given to us in our modern age, and with many translations of all of that information by many wonderful scholars, none to be dismissed. And also available online on YouTube, many great scholars. Yeah. Jackson Crawford has done quite a bit of work specifically on Havamal.
Right.
And along with what he has translated to transition into he specifically, he also will give you pronunciation based on what is established today,
right,
based on what we know from years ago, compared to the modern Icelandic and Norse, the language that's spoken today, what we know of the medieval. He's done great work with that. So, Tolkien, translate.
Yeah.
Bellows, Simic, Larrington, Bray, just to name a few. These
right.
are all translations. If you read each of these translations, they'll be slightly different.
Right.
The Havamal is the ballad or the words of the High One, Uthin, the god of wisdom, of war, of death, the hanged god, the god who sacrificed for wisdom, for knowledge. These are his words, or they are said to be his words.
Right.
This all comes from the oral tradition, common sense. Virtually every part of the Havamal, the words of the High One, is based on common sense.
Right.
Don't drink too much. If you do, expect consequences. Don't cross ice when you're unsure of what your journey is going to include. What dangers are you exposing yourself to?
There's no reason
Never
to go.
leave your home without your weapons
right.
of war, one that we praise and sing all the time. It simply means be aware, be prepared, right. Have what you need for your journey. You never know what you're going to run into. Do you take a journey in today's world without a spare tire, or some way to inflate a tire, or some way so that your journey, your vacation's not impeded by
right.
this very simple thing, but a real thing? In the old days, we always had a spare, sometimes two.
Right.
And you're on your car.
Yeah, absolutely,
so
right.
It's words of the High One. It's common sense. They're compared to Proverbs because that's a compilation of wisdom taken from supposedly the author of Solomon, the wise. Again, a wise entity. Whether you believe that there is or was in Uthin, whether you believe that the words that we speak tonight or the source of this material has been compromised or tainted in some way, shape, or form, we know that this is what's available to us. The rest of it comes down to us.
Right.
Those who are most learned tend to be less involved. They separate themselves from the emotion, the poetry, the beauty of the written spoken word. They're analytical. They can't see the joy behind. They don't understand the depth of the meaning.
Right.
They're going literally from what they understand of the word. But the words, so typically, have so many other connotations, meanings.
Right.
A word can mean several different things, but maybe it's not just a word. It's a word that's attached to a meaning that is a deeper understanding of what you're trying to say. It's tricky. So that's why we tonight have brought several versions, and also those that lead up to it. This is history, mentioned in the history. This is part of the history of the Vikings, of the Scandinavian people, of the people that lived the Bronze Age into the Iron Age, into the age that we call the Age of Exploration, the Vendel era or whatever time slots you want to put them in. I consider it the age of the heroes, and then it goes into the modern Viking raids on the monasteries and moving into the river systems and expanding their horizons. All of that's contained in this, but Havamal is part of all of this.
Right.
Why? You are possessed of wisdom, knowledge, and experience. Wisdom, knowledge, and experience. With those things came episodes in your life that you had to explain to someone, or you remembered in such a way that your voice, your memory, the words you used changed somewhat the memory of someone else who experienced the exact same thing, but not from your point of view.
Everyone's point of view will always be different. It's a matter of their perception. The exact same thing at the exact same time could be happening to us, caused by the exact same person. But how you perceive his actions are not going to be the way I perceive his actions. You may see him being a little bit of a threat, but as where I might perceive him as being a joker, or vice versa. But at the end of it, we kind of feed off of one another as to go, okay, this individual's, they're okay.
Right.
You know, we I guess we kind of judge.
Oh, certainly.
Who we allow in our company. Not that we're judging people and whatever. But, I'm not even going to get into that conversation.
You have to stay cautious
I
until
judge
you really learn somebody.
I allow around me, because I do not want people who do not bring good tidings or drama, which seems to be endless. It's just something that I don't want to get into.
Yeah.
It just happens. And how you deal with it. You can either overreact, blow everything all out of proportion, and I don't want to ever see you again. I'm sorry, my calm is worth more than you will ever know. So,
Oh, definitely.
Go away.
And all of that is said in the Havamal. Just those life experiences, those things you will encounter from an individual's point of view. Now, be very clear on this. The Havamal is not general information for everyone. It's really targeted to males.
Yeah.
It's targeted to males who are on a journey.
Right.
Now, that journey will include your loved ones, your partners, your friends, your family. But what the Havamal does is give you guidance along the way.
Right.
Part of it is taking you to that ninth sacrifice degree of actually exposing yourself to death in order to gain knowledge that is not attainable in any other way. That's ultimate sacrifice for knowledge, for wisdom, used from experience and knowledge combined with common sense.
In my reading of it thus far, I've really found out that there's a lot of, I won't say a lot of, but there's a handful of stanzas that are directly male dominant oriented. And through my posting of them on the page and kind of taking my thoughts on them, I've gotten some feedback from the women. Well, let's be honest. If you reverse the roles, it applies both ways.
Yeah.
Because in some instances, there is a male and or female version of the exact same character attributes that we're talking about in this specific stanza. And either way, there are some stanzas that are definitely male dominant that do not have a place in modern society. There are a few in there. Not to be controversial or sexist or anything, but the words are the words, and you have to really determine for yourself, is it age appropriate, as in the age that we live in? Because we are not of those people from that place, in that place and time. We're American heathen, if you would, and we have to visualize some of these things Are they acceptable common day?
Applicable.
Are they applicable common day? Absolutely. So let's get into it.
All right.
We're going to start right at the beginning. I have the study Havamal, which is probably the best recommendation I can give you without investing in something a bit more showy and probably pricey. The study Havamal has the Old Norse text, as well as the Bellows, Bray, and Thorpe translations, which for me has made it very easy to try to discern, decipher word placement, how it was used, and, overall meaning. All right, so here we go. Stanza 1. Now I will start simply with the Bray version and read that, because if I attempt to read the Old Norse text, I am certain that I will butcher it. Sorry. At every door ere one enters, one should spy round, one should pry round, for uncertain is the witting that there be no foeman sitting within before one on the floor.
And that's Bray.
And that's Bray.
Bray was the first of the Havamals that I read, and this came to me online as I started on my path in 1999. In that latter part of that year, that's when my awakening came forth, and I started searching for that which I remembered having read in my youth when I just did the historical life of the Vikings. My introduction to Vikings and the history of the Scandinavian people came about in two ways. One was the story of Thor's journey to Jotunheim when I was a very little boy, about 5 years old. And about 8, the Thor comic book came out. I already knew about Thor. Now, contained within that comic book was selections from the Havamal.
Right.
Now, this is called Tales of Asgard. So we'll have a discussion at some time about modern contemporary ideas and where the information is going and how it's coming back to us and how much of it's wrong, but it's based on something that's real. So we'll have that conversation. But the first stanza is simply telling you to be aware. Now, we have lived a life. We've lived a life where our lives have been threatened, or we've had combat before us, or a street fight, or whatever the situation may have been. We went into strange territory with strange people we didn't know, and we needed to be aware of our surroundings. And this is simply what it says.
Yes, definitely.
Now, Bray has spoken in that way. This was a gift from my brother. This is from Bellows. Mm-hmm. This is one of the older translations. Again, everything came in time. Olive Bray is one of the older translations. So we have some of the older translations, and then they'll be leading up into some of the newer translations. All of them are wonderful, and all of them are correct, and all of them are just slightly different.
Right.
So this is Bellows. Within the gates ere a man shall go, full warily let him watch. Full long let him look about him. For little he knows where a foe may lurk and sit in the seats within.
So imagine that you have traveled a long way, you've come upon a town, and you're looking for warmth, food, and drink, and you step into a tavern. But the first thing you do is, should you open that door and step across the threshold, is you look at the four corners of the room that surround you. You have to be aware of your surroundings. You take small, micro-conscious measures of where will you sit. Not just simply what's available, but where will you sit? Will you sit by the fire? Whatever. It all depends on just simply being aware of your surroundings, where you feel the most comfortable, and where you will most likely be the safest.
Now let's take this back to the year 1000 or the year 500.
Right.
During the heroic age, the age of the Volsunga Saga and Beowulf. You're traveling. Now, there is no tavern. There are no towns. There will be a farm, maybe just a woodsman's hut.
Yeah.
A thrall's...
A form of shelter.
Something.
Yeah.
But what you're looking for is light. So you're looking for light. Any kind of light that doesn't match up with what's above you. So you're looking for light, man-made light. And you see it in the distance and you go to it. Now, you don't know who lives there. If it's a haul, if it's a great haul, then you can assume some things, and probably that individual's known. If he's a big farmer, if he's a Bondi and he has a good bit of land and several structures, then chances are he understands the rule of hospitality.
Right.
But just because there's the rule of hospitality doesn't mean it's always going to be observed. And you can put yourself in a position where you find enemies that have a blood debt against you, and now you're going to have to deal with it. There are profound consequences contained in the very first stanza from Havamal. You better be aware of your surroundings. Now, you and I have traveled some in the military. We've been put in some situations. We had to know what was going on in the environment that we were going into so that we could get back out with the people that we went in with. That's an interesting consideration when it's applied to this.
When traveling, I would always look for the smaller establishments. The larger establishments, yeah, okay, they may or may not understand the welcoming mat. But with the smaller ones, there's less mouths to have to worry about what my reputation may or may not hold.
Less faces to see and consider threat.
Less faces to fight. The smaller homes.
So the other translation that we have of that is Thorpe, and it reads, "All doorways before going forward should be looked to, for difficult it is to know where foes may sit within a dwelling," which completely mirror images your take on traveling 1,000, 2,000 years ago. A hut, a dwelling, simply put, a dwelling.
This is from Larrington.
It's quite possibly more dangerous,
slightly different
than it was
then.
We traded the dangers of nature,
yes,
for the dangers of mankind.
Yes.
Definitely.
All right, so I got a bear on me. Okay, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Or modern day, just trying to get here.
Yeah.
How many accidents are on the way because these people know how to drive? There's different levels of dangers.
And we expose ourselves to them every single day.
But the dangers that
They're just not natural
then are not the dangers that we have now.
Right.
Unless you put yourself in that position, in which case, again, you should know what's in your environment before you ever get in there and commit yourself to it. Now, this is from Larrington. All the entrances, before you walk forward, you should look at, you should spy out, for you can't know for certain where enemies are sitting ahead in the hall. Now, let's put this in a modern context. We all have spent a good bit of time in taverns, in pubs, in bars, in nightclubs. For myself, since the 1970s, when I first came of age, so to speak, at 18, and then in the military at 21, and then in the South, where things were very different from California, up in New York, different places along the East Coast, all of them different environment, but every single one of them, and you know this because you've been with me for years, if I go into a place I'm not familiar with, or even if I am, you'll find my back against a wall.
Facing an exit.
Generally.
I want to see who's before me. Right. I want to see who's coming in.
Yeah,
it's not because I feel threatened. It's an old habit that never died growing up in San Francisco, where you were always potentially under some threat from somebody who just didn't like who you were or knew who you were or knew somebody you knew and connected you to them. So conflict was there.
It was.
So be aware. Be aware of your surroundings.
You gentlemen have seen, military service, where I had not, but it was definitely a lesson that was drilled into us through martial arts in the time that I studied, that you always have to be aware of your surroundings, because you never know what kind of situation you might find yourself in, and it may not be of your own doing, But you always need to know what's going on, where the four walls are, where's your exit, and how quickly can I get there should the
And what
need
kind
arise.
of surface am I walking and running
Right.
and fighting on?
But also, if I'm comfortable with you sitting at my table, I don't necessarily have to watch my back.
Right. I'm
Because
watching your back.
I know you. I will have your back as you will have mine. So, a lot of times when I'm in public, I don't have to worry about that because I'm very fortunate that I have a small group of friends that
We'll watch your back.
that are always watching my back because I've watched theirs.
And that is,
So I'm very fortunate.
if you ever see me in that compromised situation, it's because my brothers are with me,
Yeah.
and I'm not concerned.
Right.
Not concerned. The very next stanza changes things up completely. It's an entirely different viewpoint. Now you're coming in into a hall. You're coming into a home, but typically this is a hall. This is a place where there's a lot of individuals. There's a lot of resources. There's food. There's warmth. There's drink. It's not necessarily a party. It's a gathering, but
And it's interesting that in stanza 2, and we'll read it real quick here in a minute, they use the word givers as in the hosts, because if you are indeed walking into an establishment, they are the givers. They are the hosts. They are who will be providing for you during your stay. So I think that, and like I said, we'll read it in a second, but it makes sense if you look at it in that aspect. The givers are the keepers of the dwelling that you are entering.
now again, each of these will have a slightly different voice to them because of the way it's written. Hail to the giver, a guest has come. Where shall the stranger sit? Swift shall he be who with swords shall try the proof of his might to make. They're changed up there, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Hail to the giver, a guest has come. Where shall the stranger sit? Now there's a challenge. Swift shall he be who with swords shall try the proof of his might to make. Where you sit in the hall, where you are received in the hall, is based on who you are. You walk into my home. You don't knock. You walk into my home. You're my brother. Why would I deny you entry? This is the way we've always been.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And the
So,
same thing goes for
But
you.
we
You walk
earn
into-
that place.
Right.
We earn that place. So, in the first portion of this stanza, it's kind of happy,
Yeah.
relaxed. Hey, here I am.
Right.
But I'm
Welcome.
This is who I am. You will take me seriously.
Yeah. Another take on it from Bray. Hail ye givers, a guest is come. Say, where shall he sit within? Much pressed is he who fain on the hearth, who seek for warmth and weal.
Warmth and weal. Comfort. Again, two different understandings of the very same words. Very same. Swift shall he be who with sword shall try the proof of his might to make.
If you have an issue that I am here and you need take stand with me, by all means, allow it to happen. However, based on the first few lines, is I am in your home, I am in your hall. Maybe is now not the time nor place.
This is who I am. You will respect me with where you sit. In the old way, where you sit at the table, how close you sat to the Lord or to the owner of the hall, someone of status, the farmer, the bondi, the chieftain, where you sat in relationship to that individual and his partner, his wife, whatever, they're typically on a raised platform in the hall, was status.
We see this.
This is status.
We see this a couple of different times in the tales and the travels of Odin, where he's just a wanderer under a random alias of his choosing, and he comes into a hall. Depending on the story, is like You have to think about the setting. Here's this scraggly old, downtrodden, dirty, mucky, smelly wanderer who has come in. Yes, you may feast with us. Sit at the table. At the end.
Yes. Yes.
At the end.
Yes.
Now, let's say you are clad in a bit of armor, something of wealth. You portray yourself a bit higher than others, and you come into an estranged hall, and you are welcomed. Sit here, next to my wife. Converse with me. You're closer now. You regardless of the reason, are now taking a greater part in the event that is there and then.
It tells us in the Havamal, if you enter into the hall as a beggar, hospitality dictates you'll still be fed.
Yeah.
But you won't be given precedence.
Right.
If you go into the hall as a traveler, as a wanderer, as an Uthin would, as the Gangleri does, then yes, you'd still be welcome. You're probably a storyteller. You're somebody that will share that which is happening in the wider world, and you will be welcome, and you will be given precedent. You don't have to be a skald. You don't have to be someone who is poetic. You just have a story to tell, so
Right.
you'd be welcome. That's a
Later
wonderful thing.
on, we'll find that
Then
exact...
you walk in as Beowulf.
Or Lodfafnir, which was what I was going to get at. Yeah, later on we see the Lay of Lodfafnir, which is a structured part of the Havamal, where a man effectively comes into a tavern, gets warm, fed, drink, drags a stool to the center of the room, gets himself situated upon it, and tells what he has heard from the lips of Odin. Or so he says. But he had everybody's attention.
That was your television. That was your radio. That was your entertainment. Music was played, yes. Musicians certainly were there. There were skalds. That's where this comes from.
Right.
The oral tradition. Travelers had a different story to tell. Now, could they also do verse? Yes. The highborns were expected to put forth verse. They're expected to rhyme, or not rhyme, but at least put forth stanzas that would mean something, have significance. Kinning, of course, we'll get into kinning.
Flighting, yeah.
All of these things that come forth. But the storyteller, the wanderer, the traveler, most of you, as you came into my life, had a story to tell. You came from a different place. You came into my life in different ways.
The next stanza we're actually talking of the traveler. When you are the traveler. And this makes, honestly, the most sense when I've been on the road for 6 to 7 hours traveling to see my parents, and I walk into the house. He hath need of fire, who now has come, numbered with cold to the knee. From food and clothing the wanderer craves, who has fared the old rimy fell. The rimy fell in this particular case are the ice and slosh colored hills that you have, the old roads over the...
If you can call them a road.
Right, exactly.
We would call these paths today, but...
I would prefer in this particular stanza bellows, honestly. And it reads, fire he needs who with frozen knees has come from the cold without. Food and clothes must the farer have. The man from the mountains has come.
Yes, that's what this is. Now this is from Larrington. Fire is needed for someone who's come in and who's chilled to the knee. Food and clothing are necessary for the man who's journeyed over the mountains.
Now, if you live in the northern part of the world, and I'm talking northeastern U.S., north central U.S., Canada, Alaska, we're talking about the Europeans, Scandinavian area, the northern parts of the world, this applies. It's always cold. And if you're walking, even if it's from one house to the other side of the estate to another house, it's cold. It is going to bite you to the bone. The first thing that you crave when you come into a dwelling is the warmth.
Yes.
Simply the warmth. And you know what? Maybe some fresh, dry clothes would be nice.
Yeah. And that's understood. The beauty of this is the way of life. Now, This is presented as the words of the High One. Simple wisdom. This simple wisdom could pertain to any culture, any history, any people. These are words that resonate to anyone who's lived a life, anyone who's traveled. And you will find that for the most part in the first portion of the Havamal.
Yeah, simple truths.
These will apply to any history, any people that has ever existed.
Now, there has been times when I've had people at my table. We'll just be
That's fair. At your table.
at my table.
Yeah.
Your table is here tonight. Your table is at your home. When I go out to a dive, I prefer dives because they're small and I know the faces and it's safer. So at the dives, I will sit at a table. And there have been people that have walked in that I did not know that were weary travelers that will actually, I will have them sit closer to me than the people that would be wearing the armor, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they have the armor does not mean that I hold them in high regard.
Right.
And I will push them down.
Mm-hmm.
Go
At your table.
at my table.
He craves for water, who comes for refreshment, drying and friendly bidding, marks of goodwill, fair fame it is won, and welcome once and again. So here again we talk about the traveler, who his mouth is parched, and drying his clothes he seeks, that hospitality, which is to a point common law.
It is, yeah.
Hence the friendly bidding. He's kind, marks of goodwill, soft-spoken, apparently means no ill will. Tells stories of his fair fame, his victories. We all do this.
Bring them in close.
Yeah.
Let me find out what you're about. Not too close.
Yeah.
Get you in close. Find out what you're about.
It's almost as if now you've been granted your right to speak.
Put it in again to comparison to those things that we have done in our valley. The pubs, the bars, the restaurants, we've attended many of them. We've always taken care of the bar owner, the staff.
Mm-hmm.
We've always made sure the tab was paid, even if a brother forgot. John's done it many times.
Hey, where's such and such? Oh, he left.
We
Well,
take
he
care
forgot.
of that place, which we
definitely.
call ours. We don't own it, but it's ours. While we're there, we're honored. I don't have to ask. It's what I drink is provided. It's I've compared it to the Cheers concept.
Yeah.
It is very much like that. When you go in, if you're respectful, if you're nice, if you can share in the moment,
Right.
share memories, share
Well-mannered.
stories, just being a part of where you are, understanding where you are, know where you are, first stanza, know where you are, look around, weigh things out, get an idea what's going on here. Who are these people? Where do I fit in? I'm cold, I'm hungry, I need something, and you're going to give it to me. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Gift for a gift can simply be thank you with sincerity.
Yeah, definitely.
That's gift for a gift.
Moving on to stanza 5. And I will just, like I said, John, I kind of think of you when I see this, because you tend to travel a bit more. He hath need of his wits who wanders wide. Aught simple will serve him at home, but a gazing stock is a fool who sits mid the wise and knows nothing. You personally, like you said, when you go out, you have your table, and you're not what they would say here, a gazing stock, and effectively the the joker, the laughing fool. You're not that person. And
Although he has been.
To lighten moods, I don't mind taking a shot or two.
but the second half of that is simple enough. To prevent yourself, in a way, of being a fool, sit around those who know and listen.
Wits must he have who wanders wide, but all is easy at home. At the witless man the wise shall wink, when among such men he sits. Point that he made earlier. Just because the person comes in and maybe they're not all of that, maybe they're not on the same level as the other people around engaged in the conversations, doesn't mean that that individual, if they're polite, can't sit with us.
Even sit closer to us.
That's right.
Right.
Because
Because-
perhaps that one needs to hear what's being said, and perhaps that will, in some way,
Contribute.
become a better part of that person's life, which contributes to ours.
They may find the path that they were looking for, or they may hear something that they needed to hear to make things better, palatable for them. I don't know.
And it really brings to point simply, circumstance determines what course of action.
First, don't consider yourself wise if you consider yourself wise. The wise sit amongst each other to learn from each other. This is from Larrington. This is the first portion of stanza 5. And again, it still goes back to the first one. Be prepared. Know what you're doing before you get involved in something. Wits are needed for someone who travels widely, leaves for extended periods of time. Anything will do at home. Be prepared for your journey.
Definitely. Yeah.
Now, again, wits must he have who wanders wide, but all is easy at home, which is a little bit different. Two different translations, but the implication that we see from it is that have your home prepared before you take your journey.
Yeah.
Make sure that your animals are fed, watered, fresh bedding if need be. Same way with your spouse, your parents. Make sure that everything at home is taken care of before you leave. You show your home respect before you go out onto the road. Have your home prepared for you to be gone. You must be prepared as well, but your home must also be prepared.
Let's move on to number 6, gentlemen, shall we? And you said this earlier that like 5 and 6 are kind of a little bit out of place.
Yeah, they're the ones that surround them are all about wandering and being received and how to comport yourself in a given situation, to be aware when you walk in and when you are greeted well, to be thankful, to be appreciative.
Right.
And then we jump into maybe you need to be wise, maybe you need to be careful about these other things. But as they were entered into it, it makes sense. And if you didn't know, it still makes sense. These are passages of wisdom, so they do make sense. They do kind of fit in, but they were added later, and this is agreed by all of those who have done the study and the scholars that have put all of this together. A good bit of the Havamal are pasted in, if it made sense to put it with this section. And some of it seems kind of out of place, but then there's a whole bunch of it that says pretty much the same thing over and over again. And you say, well, why did they repeat it so many times? Well, probably because that was a very important part of the life of an individual 1,000 years ago.
Right.
What we're looking at here and reading here occurred 1,000 years ago in a place and time that doesn't exist now. By latitude, by environment, it does, but mindset, it doesn't. But it could and should, because it's applicable if you live in that area of the world.
Right.
It makes sense. So, 2 versions.
Stanza 6.
A man shall not boast of his keenness of mind, but keep it close in his breast. To the silent and wise does ill come seldom, when he goes as guest to a house. For a faster friend one never finds than wisdom tried and true.
And that was?
This is from Bellows.
That's Bellows.
This is from Larrington. About his intelligence, no man should be boastful, rather cautious of mind. When a wise and silent man comes to a homestead, seldom does shame befall the weary. For no more trustworthy a friend can any man get than a store of common sense.
And Brace says it this way: let no man glory in the greatness of his mind, but rather keep watch over his wits. Cautious and silent let him enter a dwelling. To the heedful comes seldom harm, for none can find more a faithful friend than the wealth of your mother wit.
Common sense.
Your common sense.
Common sense.
Absolutely.
Now, this is something that I know, and I know of my brother John. Torstig and I, when we enter into an environment, we're watchful, we listen, we pay attention, we observe. I have, over the years, given my age difference with most of the brothers in my life, observed when I would come into a gathering. I would observe my brothers having fun, my near sons having fun. Things that I might have done when I was their age, probably not because of my dignity, but it was fun for me to observe them having fun. As a father, I see the world from that perspective. I see my children participating in life.
Yeah.
I see them having fun. Common sense prevents my children from harming themselves because I've been there. I understand. I have wisdom. Stanza 6 is one of the most important stanzas in my opinion because it touches on that which is available to all of us, common sense. Whether we possess it or not, if we can just recognize it, common sense.
Yeah.
How far will you go in life with common sense, which is the purest form of intelligence as far as I'm concerned.
John?
I agree.
That'll work for me.
Common sense. It humility. If you know that you're smart, you don't need to
Show it off.
show up and be arrogant about it. You show up, show your humility, be kind, be generous, try to be welcoming, but at the same time always be reserved and think. And definitely keep your wits about you. Because your friend today may be your enemy tomorrow.
Right.
And that happens quite frequently this day and age.
Yeah.
Mostly because of the technology that we have now. Because it's easier for a coward to talk and boast behind a camera than it is to sit at a table one-on-one and have an actual conversation.
Right.
Because once they sit down together,
It becomes a battle of wits.
it becomes a battle of true wits. And the bravado behind the camera suddenly becomes the coward
Right.
quite often. Keyboard cowboys, there are many terms for
Many
them.
terms for sure. Stanza 7. And again, now we kind of sway back to
The first four.
the first, or the actions of the traveler. In the Bray translation, stanza 7. Let the wary traveler who seeks refreshment keep silent with sharpened hearing. With his ears let him listen, and look with his eyes. Thus each wise man spies out the way. And again, we fall back on to, now we're talking about the tools that you will use to be aware of your surroundings at all times.
Slides back to stanza number 1.
Right.
There's, again, each translation's a little bit different, and it is confusing. I've read 7, 8 different translations. I've translated some of it in a limited way on my own to get a deeper understanding of a specific stanzas. Not every one, but those that meant the most to me.
Right.
To get a deeper understanding. And I recommend anyone who wants to do it. Again, it marries you to the subject. It marries you to the language. It becomes your own.
Right.
You have some understanding of it. But in Bellows, the knowing guest who goes to the feast is silent. In silent attention sits,
Silent attention.
observing what's going on around them. With his ears he hears, with his eyes he watches. Thus wary are wise men all. Larrington, about his the careful guest who comes to a mead, keeps silent with hearing finely attuned. He listens with his ears, and looks about with his eyes. So every wise man informs himself, gathers information. Now, specifically here, into a mead, I look at the original, and I don't see it. So it's curious to me that they brought that forth. But I don't see mead.
And that was Larrington, you said, yeah.
But a feast, a mead, I like that.
Yeah.
I like the mead.
Yeah,
better
because
than the feast.
for how many years have we been coming together around a horn of mead? And
but
telling-
again, here's the original.
Yeah.
And you have the original. I don't see mead.
or the word muled.
So, yeah, I don't see it. So, but that's all right.
It's okay.
We know what it means.
Yeah.
It still sounds kind of a warning to be mindful of how much mead you drink.
In that translation, yeah, definitely. Because if you get too
Intoxicated, you can't
too
be
deep
of
in the
your wits.
horn,
We've been there, but we know that it's not wise to be in a foreign environment
right,
and too deep into anything.
right.
Be aware of your surroundings.
Stanza 8.
This is Bellows. Happy the one who wins for himself favor and praises fair. Less safe by far is the wisdom found that is hid in another's heart.
So,
This reminds me of you. Joy in the moment.
okay.
You're happy. You're enjoying yourself. You're happy. Your joy is infectious. You're putting on a show. You're a performer. You're good at it. We appreciate your talent. We appreciate your gift. And for me, when I'm with you, we've had our good times. But with you, I've never not had a good time. John and I have gotten serious with each other. We've had serious conversations. I've never had that with you. For me, it's always you're joy in the moment. You're typically smiling, laughing, happy. Just it's that stanza for me personally reminds me of you.
In Bray's translation, which was, happy is he who finds himself fair fame and kindly words. But uneasy is that which a man doth own while it lies in another's breast. You really never know what somebody else is truly thinking about you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is in Larrington. Very difficult it is when a man lays claim to what's in another's heart. In other words, don't assume that you're well respected.
Okay. Yeah.
You walk in thinking that you're all this, but don't assume that you are. Until I tell you that you are, you should not assume that you are. Doesn't mean you're not accepted.
That whole...
But don't put yourself up on this pedestal and say that, yeah, I'm all this,
Yeah.
I'm all that. No, you're not.
That whole...
Let me tell you are.
Do you know
this
who
is a bit
I
of the
am
braggadocio.
mindset?
This is the braggart. This
Yeah.
is the one who claims more than what he is. But I have not found that with you. And from this translation, it's a happier translation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it does say, less safe by far is the wisdom found that is hid in another's heart. So again, don't assume, but the first part of that is what I see in you. The rest of it, I had to come to know.
Yeah.
Is he all that, or is he a braggart?
Right.
This is something that we know about each other. We've come to know about each other, and with all of us have come to know each other very well. With the Havamal, this is something that we'll expand on. But the 9 noble virtues are taken from the Havamal. They're taken from these examples of wisdom, knowledge, accomplishment, the things that we admire most in other human beings.
Right.
The concept of fidelity, which is touched on in several of the stanzas, either the lack of or the continuance of. But fidelity is more than between a mate. It's also between brothers. It's between family. All of that is expanded upon and introduced to us in the Havamal that became the inspiration of the 9 noble virtues, which is not historic.
Right.
It's a modern understanding of the Havamal, the traits that we admire.
The Cliff
most.
Notes, if you would.
That's it.
Yeah. Stanza 9 follows up the kind of the exact same way. In happy is he who hath in himself praise and wisdom in life. For oft doth a man ill counsel get when 'tis born in another's breast.
Again, this is being arrogant. This speaks of arrogance. Happy the man who has, while he lives, wisdom and praise as well. Who doesn't? You know, you're appreciated by people. They're talking to you. They're asking you questions, or they're coming to you for things. For evil counsel, a man full oft has from another's heart. This is deceit, false praise.
Right.
Yeah, man, you're great. You're wonderful.
So my idea of deceit falls more here in this stanza than it does in the previous
Now that
one.
introduces you to the possibility of, well, now we get deeper into the fact of.
Right. With stanza 10, Bellows writes, or translates this as, a better burden may no man bear for wanderings wide than wisdom. It is better than wealth on unknown ways, and in grief a refuge it gives. So this, my take on it, this accumulated life's experience, this accumulated life's knowledge through your own eyes will help you. This acquired natural knowledge will help you in times of goodness and in times of sorrow, in times of loss. Because you can always fall back on your acquired knowledge, what you know to be true, to get you through.
10 and 11 speak of Uthen. It simply is who he is. This is why this is one of the stanzas that specifically speaks of the wanderer, specifically speaks of the one-eyed God. A better burden may no man bear for wanderings wide than wisdom. Who is the far wanderer? Who is the one that wanders wide? It is better than wealth on unknown ways, and in grief a refuge it gives. I've had grief. I've known grief. Grief is a wisdom. It comes about with hard experience, knowledge. This is the epitome of Uthen.
Yeah.
This is the burden he bears. Then we have had this in our lives. We have had these depths of emotions. We have wandered wide. We have seen the world. We've experienced the best and the worst, the weal and the woe. 11 says the same thing. A better burden may no man bear for wandering wide than wisdom. Worse food for the journey he brings not afield than an over drinking of ale. Now, on the one it says, In our world, what we admire most of Uthin is that he has wandered wide, he has acquired knowledge, he has experience, and is translated into wisdom. He has sought wisdom constantly. The very next one, a better burn, starts out exactly the same way. Worse food for the journey, he brings not afield than an over drinking of ale. If you've ever gone out at a distance and you were in control of your world, and now you make that one bad decision, one bad instance comes to you, and you just ruin this whole experience that you were on. Now, it is better than wealth on unknown ways. Wisdom protects you from those foolish things. But even the wise, and this goes into depth later on, even the wise make foolish decisions. That's the beauty of the Havamal.
So 11 really ties in directly with 10 and should be read together.
Only because they begin the same way, but they end entirely different.
Entirely differently. A better burden can no man bear on the way than his mother wit. So always keep your common sense about you.
Yeah.
And no worse provision can he carry with him than too deep a draught of ale. So the worst thing that you could carry with you is the affliction of needing and having to drown whatever it is about you in the ale.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't benefit you.
Benefits you not. No worse provision. It's the worst thing.
It's an experience, but it's not a good one.
No better burden can a man carry on the road than a store of common sense. Better than riches, it will seem, in unfamiliar place. Such is the resort of the wretched. Carrying too many of your own burdens can bring yourself down, is what I'm getting from this. And it will lead you, or resort to, of the wretched. So you will literally end up becoming a bottom feeder if you allow yourself to become one.
So it's also like handle your own fate in a way.
Absolutely. Well, handle your own fate.
Effectively,
Yes.
you need to be able to play the hand that you have been dealt.
It's make good choices.
Yeah.
That's basically what I get from it.
That whole idea of making good choices
You make
simply
good choices.
falls upon
You make bad
the
choices,
wisdom
bad
that
things
you have
happen.
Collected.
Same thing with the way you surround yourself with good people, or you surround yourself with bad people. You surround yourself with drama, or you surround yourself with responsibilities that can take you away from that.
Right.
To a certain degree, it's having respect for yourself.
Right.
I think that I personally feel that the gods will have respect for you if you have respect for yourself. And the way that you get respect for yourself is through actions of showing respect.
Definitely.
All right, so moving up to number 11. No better burden can a man carry on the road than a store of common sense. A store of common sense. Not just a little bit of common sense. A store
If
of
you're
common
going
sense.
traveling, you best have a good bit of.
Know the roads.
Even if you don't have the
Read.
experience, have common sense.
Yeah.
Common
Which will
sense.
help you gain the experience in a positive way. And this is the idea of the witless sitting amongst the wise.
Absolutely.
Witness isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Ignorance isn't a bad thing, you just don't know. Stupid is a bad thing. But there's nothing wrong with not knowing. Being witless is simply meaning I don't know.
Right.
I don't have that knowledge. Now you can make it negative if you want to, but it also can become a positive, which is the way it should be looked at.
Know your journey before you go on the journey.
Right. Understand the pathways to get to your destination to the best of your ability.
Prepare for your journey.
Right.
Not just your means of the journey, whether it be a horse or a car, plane, whatever, but take care of your home. And there's a lot of respect all the way through it. Most of it is for yourself and your home. That's what I get. No matter, okay, a worse journey provisioning he couldn't carry over the land than to be too drunk on ale. In other words, be mindful of how much you drink.
Always. You know, definitely.
It's good to drink.
But if you overindulge.
But if you overindulge, the chances of you returning home are
Having hiked
slim.
and having gone through military hiking and engagement, the last thing we ever brought in the field was alcohol.
Right. It's the
We wanted water. We wanted
Right.
something to drink. So, yeah. Depending on the situation, we believe that the first 10, 11 stanzas set up the remainder of Havamal.
Yeah.
The remainder of it continues along different topics of the similar type, goes off channel into something entirely different as to relationships.
Yeah.
Goes into the seeking of wisdom through extreme measures. Understands the fallacy of men and women. Explains reality that no matter how wise you think you are, you're not.
Right.
Take a couple of steps back and stop looking in the mirror so much. Understand that your wisdom is based on your interaction with others and how you're gaining knowledge and through experience the ability through common sense to bring forth wisdom in yourself to share with others.
pretty much. You can sit here and go this one, and it will have something to do with the first 10.
Yeah.
This is just addition to it.
Yeah. This is beyond the common
The
sense.
fleshing it out.
Yeah. And we will flesh it out.
Book.
We will spend time and we will do this again and we will carry on from 12 and see how far we get on our next session. Please, I do hope you join us. If you haven't seen us before, just check us out on the Facebook page. Check us out on Instagram if you have that. And we will carry on further within the Havamal next time. Skull Brothers.
Skull.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next go-round.